I don't really talk to people about their periods or their menstrual cycle.
And to be honest, I probably wouldn't choose to come talk to you about it.
I know that it happens every month. I'm aware of that. I guess there's kind of like a jokey thing around women maybe being a bit more grumpy like during that time. Not, like, I suppose not feeling themselves is probably a nicer way to put it. But yeah, like it affects everybody in different ways as well. I guess like cramps, that's something that happens, can be worse for some than others, and like kind of talking about the pain that you can experience and how you can use those tests on men, which does sound like it's pretty full on.
And they're different for every woman.
Yeah.
So every woman feels it differently. Some women bleed heavier, some women have the psychological sort of side effects of it much worse. Any women that've got endometriosis as well, that's like a whole other level. But I think that's the other part to add, is that no two periods, even for an individual, are the same, let alone for different women.
It's really helpful for guys to talk to the women in their lives about some of the things that perhaps impact women that don't impact men. Yeah. So it's been a bit of a taboo subject, hasn't it, around women's health, things like periods, menopause, that kind of stuff. But actually, it's really important for guys to kind of understand that. And, you know, vice versa. I'm sure there's things that women need to know about men in the workplace too. But there are some real specific kind of women things that otherwise guys don't tend to talk about, is it? And I think you mentioned that you'd had some chats with some of the women in your life about some of this thing, and it was quite an eye-opener.
Well, that was it for me. I mean, must be honest, completely sort of not ignorant is perhaps the wrong word, but not really open or aware of what's involved or what can happen. And ahead of having this discussion, I have had some conversations, and it's been completely eye-opening that it is just a lot more than just hot flushes. You know, it sounds utterly traumatic, to be honest, but I think we need to be having sort of more open conversations.
I would go talk to one of my female colleagues and be like, oh God, I'm really struggling today. But I wouldn't actually come and talk to you about it. But so again, I think it's like a two-way comms thing. Being like, I know that you're willing and happy to have the conversation. Now I know that, not that I didn't know that before, but now we've been, having this conversation now, I can probably feel much more confident to be like, well, having a bad day. So I think it's a two-way thing.
And it doesn't, it's not about it's not necessarily about talking about the details. It's just it's like
I need a day.
Exactly, a day to kind of just be myself or whatever it might be. And I think having those kind of open conversations, I think is good.
I like to think I'm approachable and open and understanding to these topics, but I can't say it's one we've a conversation we've had.
No, it's not something I suppose we talk about actively. I would say that you are, but I would say we're not colleagues, we're friends, and I would feel comfortable talking to you about many things. So I suppose there's a difference then, I suppose, to how we talk as friends and colleagues, and also how then people who are in our team for whom you are their boss. That's a different dynamic, and I suppose it's very easy for me to sit here and say we're doing it really well, but that's not, we don't know that. That's not fact. Everyone has a different perspective on that. So that's, I suppose, a point of consideration for us as a business, that definitely. Just because we feel like we're doing it well doesn't mean we necessarily are, and we should always be critical of that.
Ideally, you'd have everybody having some kind of level of awareness, but the people who are most likely to really need to know are the immediate managers, aren't they? And also the HR team, so that people have got the opportunity to go and speak to them separately about it. It's quite difficult to kind of like just do like a training course or something. I think it is this kind of thing, discussion, and maybe people really feeling the personal impact of it. I certainly have seen in my work in some businesses, it's been really good where you've kind of had like an ambassador on women's things, and they've then had sessions with the leadership team or with HR or both to just talk about some of the kind of practical realities of this. And I think people will understand it better if they hear it from somebody that's got proper experiences than just going and doing a training course or something.
I think it's quite nice that we're able to see maybe the more fun side to it as well.
Spoken like a man. I'm really sorry, Ben.
Typical man.
Sorry.
I remember Alec from Dame, which is a brilliant period product company. They're also a B Corp, and he says they've just got tampons all around their house, and his kids would sort of be like swinging them around like cowboys in their kitchen. But he was like, even though it's funny, it's kind of like it's just normalising it at home, and then it's such a normal conversation. And if you can normalise it at home, in society, at schools, then you're going to normalise it in the workplace as well.
There are so many sort of women's campaigners out there now who are fighting for this sort of cause and fighting for women to be heard and understood better around some of these issues. But yeah, there's that education. And I think so much that does come from talking to people being able to share their experiences. Like, you can read lots, but people being able to share their experiences. I always see those TikToks as well of like men wearing those things that give them what's the equivalent of like period cramps, and just watch some of those and just count yourself lucky.
I think that my hormones, especially as I seem to be getting more into my 30s, are getting more extreme. So I just generally feel more anxious in like the week before my period starts. And I can literally like burst into tears like very easily. Like, say we've got a board meeting and that's the week that is the week that I'm feeling emotional. I can come out and just beat myself up about it. But I think that maybe if it's like I can have the conversation with you guys, being like, God, the reason I'm feeling more anxious about that is because actually it's a week before my period, so don't worry about it too much. It's just my hormones like causing havoc. And actually, it's probably me having the confidence to be able to have those conversations with you, and then you can understand why I'm maybe feeling more anxious in some weeks over others.
So I think it's just being supportive.
Yeah.
I think it's
that's the same for any anxiety, isn't it? You know, you might know people don't always want to say why they're anxious.
No.
It could be because of that. It could be because of other things.
And,
I guess.
And it's getting rid of the sort of, there's no need to be embarrassed about sort of these sorts of things, and just being open. So I think it's just about listening.
Yeah, definitely. And knowing that if someone does raise an issue around that, the person that they're talking to, particularly if it's male, isn't just going to suddenly kind of go white and change the subject, isn't it? Or just dismiss it as a woman. Oh, it's a woman's thing, you know.
Yeah.
Was it you or me?
It's you.
That's me. I think it's unfortunate that people feel the need to have to come up with another reason to legitimise why they are off sick. I think it should be accepted that that is something that might require some leave.
In a job where I was part of a predominantly female team but with a lot of male leadership, I was acutely aware of the fact that me needing additional time off would potentially be misconstrued as unprofessional, or that I would maybe just be being a bit whingy, when not every woman has the same symptoms. We're not all telling the same story, so I think that sometimes illegitimizes it for some people. They don't realise how unique and individual the characteristics of all of that can be for the rest of us.
It doesn't.
Nice.
And and kind of like I think I've got 2 children myself. My brother, co-founder, has 2 children, and I think children are kind of an amazing, often quite obviously very grounding, but also can create a lot of stability. And so people who come to work for Flexi Hex might be young and moving around, and really what we love and was people settle down and really get to know the job, and kind of and often pregnancy and children and families can lead to sort of stability, and but we're open.
I always remember when a previous employee applied for the job, got the job, and said, oh, but my wife's due in a couple of weeks and we're going to need to go on paternity leave, and does that affect my application and I can start afterwards? And you said, absolutely not. Like, it's like you will start and you will then go on paternity leave, and we'll pay you the paternity leave that's in our policy, and then you can come back afterwards. And I think that for me was like gave me such confidence that you've got really good morals as a leader of the business, and that you take maternity and paternity really seriously, and it doesn't affect people's applications.
Having done it twice, most definitely. I was all but forced out of my first job because they wouldn't accept anything less than 4 days a week, which is what they considered flexi work, but that was basically 5 days worth of work in 4 days. I know that Flex Appeal, Pregnant and Screwed have been doing loads of work around changing legislation around being able to get back into the workplace. And I think now you do have to at least have a conversation with your line manager and have to provide in writing why you can't do flexi time or part-time. So there's definitely room for improvement though, and more to be done.
I think for women coming back to work after maternity leave, especially with the expected childcare load that does seem to fall on women, there's a lot more can be done. I don't think women feel that they're able to re-enter their professions where they left off quite often. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done there.
Male CEOs traditionally in the past would have had a woman at home that kind of dealt with all those things, but the women CEOs are basically covering it all. So I think that's just also something really interesting to think about. And when I look at, you know, leadership progression for women in our firm, you do have to really think about like what barriers are there, whether it's going off on maternity, whether it's, you know, what setup they've got at home, and how to put the support around that they can still do a really great job while not going under the bus of dealing with just everything.
Essentially, so if you look at it purely from a business point of view, right, it affects their performance. Not in a negative way, but it does. Yeah. So if you can understand it better and mitigate it or make adjustments for it, you'll have a better business.
And even if that's the way to sneak it into these big board conversations, but like you're going to get more money if you listen to your female employees.
Women, when they go through the menopause, they feel like a loss of identity, you forget stuff, you just feel out of control of what's happening to your body. So I guess just being a support, providing a bit of sort of nurture and care, and just being accepting that like that person's going through something, and just ask them like, how can we support you?
There's definitely been a change in discourse around like periods and menopause, especially in the last few years. But it's still kind of something that I see with people my age as well, that there is still a lot of shame felt around them.
If you were at school and a tampon fell out of your locker and a boy was walking past, you'd know about it. In fact, everyone would know about it within half an hour. So I think there's a lot of kind of deep-rooted shame and embarrassment that comes from being a young girl and how things are received then, and we bring that forward with us.
As far as I'm aware, I think we have necessary things.
We have in the women's toilets, we have tampons, we have pads. They are from Anne's Sisters, who are an eco-friendly period product business. We have a direct debit with them, and we just top it up when things run out.
You know, we've only just put sanitary products into the loo, and you know, I suppose it's kind of like they should have been there from day one. I think probably if I was a female leader, that probably would have probably been in the bathroom.
I think me being the only woman that works in office most of the time, I can't ask anyone for a tampon. I'd be very surprised. I'd be pleasantly surprised if anyone did.
Yes,
but it is kind of like a non-negotiable thing that it's kind of scary, and it shouldn't be, because obviously it's so natural to me by this point. I don't care if you guys know.
People often don't understand that the menstrual cycle is going on the whole time. So there are times when you are not due on your period, but you are still feeling very significant impact from your hormones. Sometimes it means you're on it. Sometimes I am really active, really engaged, really focused, and I can pinpoint that to what's going on in my cycle.
That's
sometimes
really I would have never thought of that. But you're right, it's a cycle, isn't it?
It's a cycle.
Obviously, it's not just that period of the month.
No. It's the whole time.
Really,
and there are different hormones, and at different times they're peaking and troughing together, or they might be peaking and troughing at different times, and that impacts on a lot of your physical health and well-being, also your emotional health and well-being. Sometimes it can really come into play as a positive thing, and other times it can be really impactful, but you might be nowhere near your period, but really be suffering the consequences of emotional, physical impact of hormones.
I've been reading also recently about how who are your hormones? Like 1 week you'll feel like you can conquer anything, and then other weeks like everything is really overwhelming. So whether you can like even structure your workload around your period. And I know there's like people out there talking about it, but you know, whether that's, you know, conversations when we're like trying to schedule in a big important meeting or a pitch, I'll be like, please don't do it that week because I'm not going to be on my best, my best form.
I think it's really good. I was actually, talking to All of Life last night about it, you know, about presentation stuff. And when you're feeling kind of really empowered and you're on top of the world, that is obviously a really good time to be doing a kind of presentation. And when you're kind of feeling, you know, you want to recluse a little bit, that is not the time to kind of, you know. So I think that's a really interesting concept. Yeah.
It's not about everyone knowing your business. It's not about saying like, oh, my period, don't talk to me. Like, it's not like that. It's actually like, oh, I'm in a lot of pain today, or, you know, I need to be kind of at home where I'm comfortable and I can be comfortable. Yeah.